Y'all back at it, back at it, back at it. Regular guy talking to y'all about the media again. I'm gonna keep hitting y'all with these videos because I think my point. I think I'm being heard, or we as Ravens fans are being heard. I'm gonna say that because I've been saying in previous videos. Anybody that's been rocking with me know I've been saying it that if Lamar Jackson had the weapons these other quarterbacks had, he would be just as good as them. And I also have said in the past that certain quarterbacks are only as good as they are because of their weapons as opposed to what they can actually do, whereas Lamar can do it all. So this is a video that I want you all to watch. I want you to listen. Big shout out to Rob Ninkovich, but I want y'all to listen to what Rob Ninkovich says in reference to Lamar Jackson.
Season's MVP, that's Lamar Jackson. Like Patrick Mahomes, he won that award in his second year. He was 13-2, 36 touchdowns, 6 picks, rushed for over 1,200 yards. Our Rob Ninkovich had this interesting thought on Get Up yesterday talking about Mahomes and Jackson.
If you take those two quarterbacks and you flip teams and you put Pat Mahomes on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson on the Kansas City Chiefs, Lamar Jackson would be back-to-back MVPs because Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, the weapons that they have offensively, Pat Mahomes would struggle in the Ravens offense with the receiving core that they have.
There you got it. What have I been saying to y'all? What have I been saying on all of my videos? How do they anoint one quarterback who has all of these weapons at his disposal, and you take shots at the other quarterback who at best has half of the weapons and has done more with less? I don't understand it. Finally, someone in the media has finally said it. Big shout out to Rob Ninkovich because he said it on national TV finally. And this is what I've been trying to hammer home to everybody. You can't tell me that Patrick Mahomes is all world and Lamar Jackson isn't. When Lamar Jackson, he can do what Pat Mahomes does. Go back and look at that Miami Dolphins game when Lamar Jackson threw the bombs to Hollywood Brown. Go back and look at the Jets games when Lamar Jackson threw the big bombs to Hollywood and Seth Roberts. Go back and look at Lamar Jackson throw the deep ball. You'll see that he can throw it. My point is, Mahomes has Mecole Hardman. Mahomes has Tyreek Hill. Mahomes has Sammy Watkins. Mahomes has Travis Kelce. Mahomes also has another number 4 wide receiver who I'm sleeping on his name right now, but he also is very fast. All of these guys have speed. Forcing the defense to play straight up most of the time and trying to double Tyreek Hill at times, leaving other guys with one-on-one. That's making it easy for a quarterback. That's why when Mahomes was hurt last year, Matt Moore, a very old journeyman backup, was able to step in, and the Kansas City Chiefs still scored 30 points a game. That's why. But we want to say Patrick Mahomes is all world, and Lamar Jackson needs to get better throwing. Why does Lamar Jackson need to get better throwing? Everybody would be good throwing, just like Matt Moore was good throwing the ball if you've got those star-studded supporting cast players. Big shout out to Rob Ninkovich, finally saying it on national TV, but I'm going to let the tape keep rolling because I got a few other beefs that I need to square away on this video.
This is so interesting to me because Ninkovich has been riding that, for several weeks on this show now, that he believes in Lamar even more than he believes in Mahomes. And the fact that we all find it so, that everyone seems to find it so crazy is interesting because, Jeff, let's just look at what has actually happened. Lamar Jackson took over midway through his rookie year, performed extraordinarily well on an offense that hadn't really been fully developed for him.
Exactly.
Playoffs. Then last year had one of the great seasons in NFL history statistically, and yet there seem to be so many who continue to question him to at least some degree. Why do you think that is, Jeff?
Well, I think if you look at Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, they're different quarterbacks, right? So Mahomes is much more of a traditional style, right? He uses his legs to buy time and make plays down the field and do some spectacular things. Lamar Jackson, the offense that has been created for him in Baltimore has been run first. So, to this point, he uses his legs a great deal to make plays, which opens things up on the back end. Do I think Lamar Jackson would have been great in Kansas City or could be great in Kansas City? Absolutely. But do I think that Patrick Mahomes would struggle in Baltimore? Absolutely not. And let's not take away coaching. Coaching matters. And, Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes has helped. John Harbaugh in Baltimore.
I want to say one thing. I want y'all to pay close attention to what you just heard, which is why I say don't trust your ears, but trust your eyes at what you see. He gave Lamar Jackson a backhanded slight. Says Lamar Jackson has to use his legs to open up the throwing, as if that's a negative thing. Like, oh yeah, Lamar, and Stephen A. Smith does this a lot as well. Yeah, Lamar Jackson he needs to get better as a passer because he can only throw as good as he can because he can run. I happen to believe that Mahomes can only throw as good as he can because he has speed at every skill position. That speed is dangerous. You ask anybody who's ever coached any level of football, they'll tell you speed is uncoachable and speed kills. It's just a fact. So what's the difference in Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman, even their running backs? What's the difference in those guys using their legs and speed to open up the game for Pat Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, who uses his own legs to open up the passing game for himself? To me, that says that one quarterback does more with less. So if the one quarterback is doing more with less and is setting records doing things that have never been done, you know, as Greeny just said, Mike Greenberg just said, had one of the greatest statistical seasons ever from a quarterback. Why do we continue to knock that player, but we anoint the player who has so much help and speed at every spot around him? And for people who say Pat Mahomes makes these guys better, all I want to ask y'all to do is go back last year, look at the 3 or 4 games he was out, and look at how that offense still produced. With Matt Moore, you cannot take any other quarterback in the league, drop him in and say, go do what Lamar does. You can't do that. But it was proven that they could drop a backup quarterback into what Mahomes does and say, go do what he does. And he did it. I'm not saying Mahomes is a very good quarterback. He has a great arm. He's very accurate. He's a very good quarterback. He deserves his contract. I'm speaking to the hate for Lamar. That was a backhanded slight to say he has to use his legs to open up the pass. They say that as if he can't really throw. It's just because defenses are worried about him running, which is why he's able to complete passes. And that's not true. But I'm going to let the tape keep rolling. That was one of my beefs.
With Lamar Jackson has helped, right? The way he's created it, they would do the same. They're gonna make their offenses work for these guys. They've shown they will do that. That matters. So for Patrick Mahomes, he would struggle in Baltimore. I disagree with that. I do think Lamar Jackson would be successful in Kansas City. As successful as Patrick Mahomes, I don't think he would be.
Booger, it's an interesting point here because let's go back to the evaluations. Lamar Jackson, people said he's going to take some time to develop as a passer. Well, in his second year, the jump from year 1 was extraordinary, and he threw the ball extremely well. He's still 23 years old, so he projects to get much better as a passer. Do you believe he ultimately becomes the kind of passer that eliminates conversations like these?
Yeah, Green, I think he will. And you just look at the history. I mean, from year 1, I remember a playoff game against the San Diego Chargers where, I mean, people in Baltimore were screaming for Joe Flacco. And you fast forward a year.
Here we go again. Just like the previous person who spoke, Jeff Saturday, Booger McFarland, comes out, you say something good about Lamar Jackson, and then you turn right around and offer him a backhanded slight. So I'm going to put it out here on this video for all of the people in the back who don't know, people that's not in Baltimore who don't know. Okay, I'm in Baltimore. The fans were not clamoring for Joe Flacco because we didn't believe in Lamar Jackson. The fans were clamoring for Joe Flacco because his nickname here in Baltimore is January Joe. Because we know that Joe Flacco is a special quarterback in postseason, more so than he is in the regular season. And in the playoffs, it's one and done. There is no next week if you don't win. And we were losing that game. The fans wanted to win that game to get to the next game. That's all that's about. It's playoff football. If you know you've got a guy who's proven in the playoffs and you're losing the game, that's why the fans were clamoring for Joe Flacco. It's not because they didn't believe in Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. It's because we were losing the game. We know we've got a guy on the bench who's proven that he can play with the best of them in the playoffs, going up against Peyton Manning and Tom Brady multiple times and outplaying them. So that's why we were clamoring. But the media wants to spin it as if, oh, the fans in Baltimore didn't even want Lamar Jackson. That's not true, and it's a backhanded slight. You give him a compliment and says, yes, I think he can develop into a good quarterback. Then you turn around and say how the fans in Baltimore were clamoring for Joe Flacco. Again, this is the way the media hates. Nobody would say anything like this for Pat Mahomes. They would never say that. But I'm going to go ahead and keep letting the tape roll. Greenberg, great points. Booger McFarland, hater.
Now he's the MVP in the National Football League. It just goes to show you how much you can improve throughout the offseason, going into year 1, year 2, and so on and so forth. But Greedy, here's what I'll say. It's interesting that Ninkovich looks at Mahomes and Jackson that way, because I think if you took a case study and you said, let's take two quarterbacks, Jackson and Mahomes, one of these guys is going to play for 15 years and the other one's career is going to be cut short. Most people would say Mahomes will be the 15-year guy and Jackson's career will be cut short.
So he says whose career will be cut short and whose career will be 15 years. And we're going to say, again, another backhanded slight at Lamar to try to paint this picture to the national audience that Lamar Jackson is going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt. I ask everyone, of the two quarterbacks to this point in their careers, who has been hurt in the NFL and who hasn't? It's not Lamar Jackson. It's Pat Mahomes. As a matter of fact, Pat Mahomes has an extensive injury history. His kneecap was knocked out. His ankle has been hurt. This is in the NFL. In college, it was his elbow or his arm or something because he wore a big cast on his arm. But we want to say that Lamar Jackson, the player who's only missed one game in his college and NFL career due to a slight ankle sprain in college, this is the guy who we're going to say he won't last. He can't last. The kid has only lasted his whole life. But Patrick Mahomes has a history of injury. He has a history of it. Go look it up. These are facts. But we want to say that Pat Mahomes will be there for 15 years and Lamar Jackson won't. Why? Do you really believe if it wasn't all of that speed around him that he would be the same quarterback? Because go look at him in college. I ask everyone, when the NFL talented receivers were not around Pat Mahomes in college, go look at how many turnovers he had. Just, it's there. Lamar Jackson never had that many turnovers in college. And he comes to the pros and he's not turnover prone. He had a few fumbling issues his first year because he didn't realize that the game was a little bit faster and the guys were a little bit stronger. He had a few fumble issues. But as far as throwing interceptions, he's never been a high interception guy. Pat Mahomes was. Now he's got speed around him where he can just throw the ball up to Tyreek Hill and Tyreek Hill goes and gets it, and he backs defenses off like that. He gives them easy throws around the middle of the field. That's the reason why, he's doing what he's doing now. But again, all things equal, you give these guys the same talent. You cannot tell me that Lamar Jackson would be unsuccessful when he's already proven that he is successful without the talent around him that Pat Mahomes already has.
Because of the style that he plays. Lamar Jackson has to use his legs to be successful. Other than that, he becomes what I would call an average pocket passer.
Here we go again. Lamar Jackson has to use his legs to be successful. Lamar Jackson has to use his legs to be successful. You're trying to knock a guy because he can do something that the other guy can't do. I don't understand this. Every single quarterback that's ever played football has some sort of a scheme around him which is going to make him be successful. And with the lack of the scheme, they aren't successful. You look at the scheme for Tom Brady. That's why he was successful, was the scheme. You look at the scheme for any other quarterback. There's a scheme. That's why all teams don't run the exact same offense, because all teams have different players. Why would Lamar Jackson not run? You can't say that he has to run in order to throw the ball. Why can't you just simply say he's great at running? He's great at running. He can still throw with the best of them. Go look at the tape, man. The guy's thrown some awesome passes. It had nothing to do with his legs. Not like he's throwing wobbly ducks around the field. But again, the hate, because they want to paint these pictures to the national audience. Lamar Jackson has to run the ball in order to throw. Well, I would argue that Pat Mahomes has to have speed all the way around the field in order for him to throw. But they won't ever say that. And this is why I talk about the media hate. I can't stand this, man. We got to fight back. I'm going to keep fighting back. And we all got to fight back, man. This isn't right. These are lies.
Mahomes doesn't have to run. He's got one of the greatest arms of all time. And so I just think style of play blends maybe into what Ninkovich is talking about as far as both of those guys maybe can switch spots. Ninkovich is leaning toward Jackson and his explosiveness as a runner. But I think the style of play lends to Mahomes having a lot of longevity, and I would bet on him a little bit more than I would Lamar Jackson.
Dan, what do you hear from people around the league? Is this conversation, is it more about how much people believe in Mahomes, or the questions that still remain in some people's minds about Lamar Jackson?
I think it's more the former, Greeny. I mean, there are always going to be doubters with Lamar Jackson because I mentioned
last hour, people get stubborn and they stick to their evaluations and they insist, oh, you know, and they'll look for flaws. But Lamar Jackson's a wonderful player. I've long believed that I was the biggest Lamar Jackson fan in NFL media, but it turns out it's Rob Ninkovich who believes he's better than Mahomes. I can't go. I respect and believe in Lamar Jackson's abilities as a passer, and I think he'll get even better in that area. But I can respect and believe that and still not consider him as good a passer as Patrick Mahomes, and that is no insult to him or anyone else.
It's worth pointing out again, Lamar Jackson is 20.
There you have it. In the national media, guys are stubborn because they had an initial evaluation and they don't want to look stupid for having that evaluation. That's what it comes down to. We ripped the guy and we tore him down, and now that he's making us look foolish, now we've got to find little nitpick reasons to complain about him, to make us look like we knew what we were talking about all along. So if Lamar Jackson plays 10 years and gets an injury 10 years down the road, I promise you they'll pop up and say, see, I told you he would get hurt. Yet Mahomes, 3 years in, has already been injured. 3 years in, while sitting out his whole first year, he's already had multiple injuries. Lamar Jackson, none. But yet, we say that he's the guy who won't make it. He's the guy who can't do it. He's the guy who needs all of these things to happen for him to be a passer. He has to run in order to be a passer. So you telling me while he was throwing all those touchdown passes last year, putting up all those perfect passer ratings, again, perfect passer ratings, and then we say he's got, how much better can you get than perfect? Lamar Jackson had 4 or 5 games last year with perfect passer ratings. Lamar Jackson had 4 or 5 games last year with 4 or more touchdowns. Lamar Jackson did something in the NFL that no player has ever done, and we say he's got to get better. Pat Mahomes has not done anything yet in the NFL that has not already been done. He threw 50 touchdown passes. That was done already. He threw for 4,000 yards. That was done already. There is nothing in this league that Pat Mahomes has done that no other quarterback has done. Lamar Jackson can say that. But the player who's done something that no one else has done is the player that we say have to get better. Yeah, okay. I'm out of here, man. I'm just going to keep them coming, man. This just goes to show the media has hate. But at the same time, they're starting to come around. Shout out to Mike Greenberg. Shout out to Rob Ninkovich. And shout out to Grizzolani, if I think that's his name, the guy here on your left. Shout out to him, too, because he said he believes in Lamar. And he also said that he actually thinks he's a better passer than people give him credit for. But again, y'all got to start watching this stuff, man, so you can call these guys out when they clearly are coming out with hateful, biased comments. Man, regular Baltimore Ravens fan, I'm out. Shout out to New Era 8. Shout out to the Baltimore Ravens, and we out here.